来，要是那个我们的现代饮食不佳，淘宝些，哎，那个人给写啊，就那个人的固定吃吧，那个把它放到这边，就是嘛那么也不让搞不的人还是不是，还是我是不是把那的把你变成的啊？那属于表啊，语气加深，还得给机会的适当，不是上对，他的是吧？
Good afternoon. So this morning, when we looked at the fifth verse, we spoke about how under the influence of jealousy, then people end up criticizing those they are jealous of, or scolding or slandering them, or unfairly blaming them. And the way bodhisattvas will deal with this is they will accept the loss, not taking it personally or exaggerating its importance, but rather offer the victory to the suffering person before them.
你这个上上来，你这不离的也得安排，那个当皮的呀，而且什么也讲不求过的，现在这里呀，下一个讲到大做工呢，现在也一直工，呢，现在这里刚刚去个什么工，什么工的工，那等于现在那个线上，你跟你啊，是大不呀，你光咱们面的理解工，这个工，你光了呀。chỉ kịp đi con học đi thì đã còn nó này thì ở sama sẽ có tí yếu với thì thì nên tập với kỹ sẽ với nhưng cuộc sống一定呢都是感冒这样的，辛苦身上到位了，那你过什么的讲完了开不，你那样的这些干嘛是的搞的呀？不是的，来，也没有。
The only reason bodhisattvas can respond like that is because they've trained their minds well. So this is what we need to do: train our mind well, train our mind so that we develop a genuine affection for others, valuing them, so that whenever we think of others or we're in their company, that a sense of closeness arises towards them. And from this, we'll be able to develop genuine love and compassion. And then when they interact with us in unkind ways, patience will arise easily, because we will not want them to be in pain. We will not want them to experience anything but happiness. And therefore, we'll be able to respond skillfully.
就是路线啊，这里这而且什么帮都是，当然那这些呀，干吧，我们也能讲究我们那个去，这边让你去改而钱的去，什么的当然，你就这个呀，感情的意思啊。现在也要考虑啥就所以说嘛，我们也考虑吧，一些呢，你给也呢，你当然开点现在的按那个艺术。结果开故事，就是新洲结果些，人家呢，可能性早晚的愿意他，人嘛，打通后回来，人家人一讲个怎么之后公司为了，对呀，按都对吧？哦，人家不能，这人家在这个意思，过来呢，这些不根本了解，后面的对就可以，那个对，亚洲人家里。这个以前呢，都那边老师有个同学嘛，俩前面是的真，那两边听老师没好看到有个他以前的雅各布斯给吃的，看到有当时我的妈妈那几人一些不是那推荐他，这个一个说呀，这俺们都是爱，其他的一个呢有的有碰嘛，反正俺们一些对于好这样啊，俺你把那这些事情吧，切。一拿去的啊，嘿，我是不很嘿，可去将近崩了，哎，的都是很久哈，让这些那这些爱下困了的些人的，看你而有就是都细水些我吃的，那这个前面吧，也不都是那个什么。 I will not teach you your degree.
All the various qualities that we have been discussing are mental qualities that come about through training our very way of thinking. So the process for training the mind is pretty straightforward, and one goes through a similar process for all the various qualities. One starts out by looking at the faults of not training, the benefits of training, and do so to the extent that deep determination arises to train, to have this quality. And to the extent that that determination arises, one will be able to apply oneself to train in the precise way that one has been guided. So, for example, to see the faults of anger, recognize that if one responds with anger, what are the likely consequences? The consequences for myself now as the angry respondent, and the consequences for the person who's angry and I'm talking to now also in a harsh manner. And what are the karmic consequences that will follow in lives to come? So in this way, by reflecting on the faults of anger, we'll come to see that it's never skillful, but always harmful. Then we think, so I've been advised to rather respond with minds such as love. What are the benefits of responding with minds such as love or compassion? And then repeatedly over a sustained period, looking at the faults of anger, the benefits of love and compassion, taking examples from what we observe in life as well as from our life thus far. A deep determination to become a loving and compassionate person will arise, a deep determination not to be deceived by afflictions such as anger. And by reflecting this way repeatedly over a sustained period, we'll see the benefits. And then we'll be able to prioritize this training, push aside the other things that consume our time, and put our energy into training our mind. So this is the technique to train our mind. And it's the technique we utilize in our daily life to develop various skills and talents. All that we have learned has come about through knowing why we should learn it, why we should develop this skill, and then applying ourselves. So this is the same process with our mind. We need to understand the benefits of doing so, and then when we are convinced that this is essential for me, indispensable, we will easily push aside everything else that consumes our time and prioritize training our mind.
其实什么的，往往把的运气是的，后来就的然后去什么的学习我也是的，然后觉得什么觉得你把呀些还来运动做对过，只是嘛后面你要是呀，哎呀，都也从现在毕业的，然后其实比现阶段这个问题，这些人特别是，对于现阶段这个对的就是些，那么其实什么是觉得不错，知道的，做对第一什么，现在干嘛这边错的这个。是让那些难听的一点切话压话切话，那就那就是什么呢？你他们其实他们对的运气不会，现在的原什么都现在的现在了，当然先去是上好嘛，上去上的多的，先是也不记得。现在的人那么的，然后嘞，甚至按这那几千块吧，上澳特别是，甚至按照去现在给人家了，现在去几千块吧上澳。人家干次也觉得讲的不像在我也是去，也讲了的，甚至他们就你把都结果身边什么也的，那甚至人就看到这个了呀，那还得也什么呢？看到的不还你吃了你为了说明商业化不这商业不商业化怎么还是该基本是就是的，应当没商业化。
Being who has developed bodhicitta went through a particular process, the same process that we are being guided in here. They looked at their own mind, independence, or in the manner in which they are guided by their teachers. They looked at their own mind and recognized that not only do afflictions regularly arise, but underneath the afflictions is an attitude called self-cherishing, whereby they hold themselves dear, placing the achievement or the fulfillment of their own needs first and foremost. They looked very closely at this attitude, this self-cherishing attitude, recognizing, I want to be happy, I want to be free of suffering. And wanting to be happy and be free of suffering, my response, though, or my method is faulty. The afflictions arise and I follow these afflictions. I keep pursuing my own happiness, and often this leads to instigating conflict with others or responding with aggression to others. And the practitioner then sees this in themselves, and they see the harm that it does to themselves and to others. Reflecting very deeply on this, a revulsion for this way of thinking arises, because they recognize it harms them and it harms others. For countless lifetimes, they have been acting in this way, following their own self-interest. And in this pursuit of their own self-interest, they have caused so much harm to others, and they've never achieved their own interest anyway, continue to suffer. And in the same guidance, they are told about bodhisattvas and how bodhisattvas are, what they value, what they prioritize. And now the practitioner, who will later go on to become a bodhisattva, compares themselves to what they are hearing about, and they see how very different they are. So they make effort to train their mind as they are being guided, to turn away from this self-cherishing attitude and rather embrace an other-cherishing attitude, an attitude where others are held dear, where instead of striving for their own to fulfill their own interests first and foremost, they strive to fulfill the interests of others. So the practitioner is, through this meditation, first sees the faults of where they are and the benefits of where others are, of where the bodhisattvas are, and gives rise to yearning to be like a bodhisattva and to change their deep-seated way of thinking. On this basis, their training, as one has been guided thus far, takes on a new sense of urgency, where their meditations to develop an attitude valuing others, which was what we looked at in the very first verse, coming to recognize that others are no different from me on a fundamental level. We all long for happiness. We all want to be free of problems and suffering. I am only one, but they are immeasurable. So I cannot prioritize myself ahead of them. Moreover, through this meditation, they develop a feeling of closeness towards others. And with this as a foundation, they can develop the wish, may all beings be happy. And this is the mind of love. And it has its companion of compassion, may all beings be free of suffering. And I'll meditate on these points again and again, overcoming any discrimination between self and other, or differentiation, but really relating to others on this fundamental level as being the same as oneself. And then developing the strong wish for others to be happy and free of suffering. Developing this ever further to the point where love and compassion are strong within them, and love and compassion dominate who this person now is becoming. It gets to the point where they have deep love and compassion for all, but this is still a mere wish. May beings have happiness and freedom from suffering. But eventually they become dissatisfied with merely having this wish, and they develop a deep resolve to ensure beings achieve such a state. They see it as their responsibility to guide others to gain freedom from suffering, because it's the guidance that beings require. Just like this practitioner now has been receiving for a long time, others also require such guidance, and they make this commitment. I will guide others to attain a state freed of suffering, a state of lasting happiness. But to do so, right now, I'm still an ordinary being. I have to become a bodhisattva. And not only a bodhisattva, I have to become a Buddha. So I commit to striving to become a Buddha so that I can guide all beings to gain freedom from suffering. And this is the generation of bodhicitta. And with this mind of bodhicitta, then, the forefront of their motivation is the welfare, the happiness of others. And therefore, if the bodhisattva gets their way or not, things go as they wish or not, this isn't important. What's important is how they utilize their mind in various circumstances to help others gain freedom from suffering. And that is their foremost objective. And how they relate then to themselves is not in terms of their own wishes, but in terms of, is my mind free of affliction? Because the bodhisattvas recognize the afflictions are what limits their potential to be of benefit, restricts their capacity to be of benefit. So in terms of looking at their own mind, they are focused on ensuring their mind is free of afflictions. And with regard to others, those are the ones I want to help. I'm not competing with them. I'm not competing with them. I am just trying to benefit them in the most meaningful of ways. So this is how a bodhisattva lives, and how one trains to get there. Starts within this training, one recognizes the great benefits of cherishing others and the faults of cherishing oneself.
get them in member, may shabby, the negative, the Rajan Manguch or what is only that the dinner Sumonaji, young Arani Leba, Yarashan of Pua, the Monera, the Chago, what?
So if we think back about 5 years ago, when the world was in a very different place to where it is now, when maybe 5.5 years ago, when the COVID pandemic was new, and people didn't really know what was going on. What is this disease? What are its causes? How can one mitigate it? And there was so much that was unknown, and therefore there was so much fear. And with this fear, people were quite happy to remove themselves from society to protect themselves from this unknown disease. And one would imagine if they were required to go out and help someone, they would be rather hesitant to do it, especially if they were fearful that this person was ill. But especially in those early times when there was so much that was unknown, medical professionals stepped up. They followed the guidance they received, that did what they could to protect themselves, and they went into danger in order to help others. So this is a very clear example of where people were guided by their compassion and their intelligence, but to help others and place the needs of others before themselves. So this is a good example of how one can live with the other cherishing mind.
Rani Shen Pembata, Roboya Wuji in Yoruba, is you two Shalia, Azulia, and the Jilinja, Sabla, Nevakia, and Gamate, Mutevina, and Delia, that's some Banadi, did you come to some kind of stumble? Yes, that's some Banadi, my love, Lord.
We'll continue looking here at the text about how to develop the capacity to be of benefit to those in difficult situations, and to be able to do so from a place of skill, a place of skill.
That's it. Gala Dagi Pandabi, Rewachewa Kashibi, Shindu Midik Nejena, Shin number tower shows.
In the 6th verse, when someone I helped and benefited, and in whom I placed great trust, mistreats me entirely unjustly, may I view them as an excellent spiritual teacher.
And in a Hungura Gala Dagi Pandabi is an Yan Dindigi Susarangi, Dashania Susuki, Dashania, Robache, La Sobata Robache, and Jigshania, Pemba Bata, Pandoche, Dinigida, Jigum, Sar, Mangu Dinigi, Unungu Jet, Dinig Pandoche, Gurua, Pandoche, Dinigi, and Dian, and the Ajig Pamainea, a Susuki, Pugulia, Datoche, Pandoya, Wuche, Maubana Pudi, Mia Wurecha, and Suchike, Lucha Yawacha, Mia Wucha, and Lia Yawura, Maubana, Sosulia, Nikanga Chidikabia, so Pando Yungri, Sampik, some Panche, and the Chiki Tuchina, Robache, Pandoje, Mangu Yungurwa, Chisadini, Zada, this order, Ganga, Tagi, Pandabi, Rewachewa, Kashi, Rewachewa, said this order, Gangi, Rang, Talia, Pendo, and Pando, Jepe, Robache, and Chiki, this Sayatuya, Ilitulo, Dinishi, Dinik Robache, a Mount Banadan. Panda Rewa Karchi was Chishina, a Rana Pando package, Mahobanaka, Solia Rewachi, Chipandon, Pando is in Bedawajana, and Korongia, Miyapuchino, Yapucha, Mission, Pando Yapuchi, Rewacheda, in the Murwa, in the Zakana, Gangla, Dagi, Pando, Rewachewa, said disorder.
Look at the first 2 lines. When someone I helped and benefited, and in whom I placed great trust. Here, think of relationships that you've had with people, where you have cared for them, you have helped them, you have benefited them to the best of your abilities. And perhaps in some relationships, you've helped them for an extensive period. And perhaps the clearest illustration from society is parents raising their children. Because parents inevitably need to go through a lot of self-sacrifice, placing the needs of their children first to ensure they have an excellent education, to ensure that they grow up with good values and are good people, with a wide variety of skills and talents. So parents put the needs of their children ahead of their own for years. And it's quite common to have an expectation for the kindness that one has shown to be reciprocated, especially when we think of in the instance of parents and children, that when the parents are older, the kids will be there and help them as they age and so forth. So this is quite usual in the relationship of parents and children, but there are other relationships that one has where one may go out of the way to help someone, and again may do so for an extensive period and going through hardships to be of benefit to someone in need. When helping someone, whether one is helping them physically, perhaps moving home, or helps them emotionally if they're having a bit of emotional crisis and they need some advice, or perhaps helping a colleague so that they can perform their role far better, one will be doing so presumably with a good motivation, wanting to help this person, someone that you know, maybe even a stranger, someone that you may be very emotionally close to and care for greatly, or someone who's just an acquaintance or even a stranger. And if it's the instance of a parent and child, one will be doing so with a long-term commitment to this child, hoping that through your efforts, they turn out to be a good person in society, someone who will grow and flourish and be of benefit in our world, have a good impact in our world. And when doing so, the way that others respond may be unexpected, and quite clearly now the third line, unjust. Instead of being reciprocating the kindness, we see on the third line, mistreats me entirely unjustly. And this, whilst it's not a commonplace, thankfully, it's quite rare, hence the word someone in the first line. There certainly are instances whereby children, perhaps older children or adults, they steal from their parents. There could be many reasons for that, but nevertheless, their parents who gave them life, raised them, the child or the adult steals from their parents, or maybe deceives their parents or deceives their siblings trying to get their inheritance. Or if one has a work colleague, perhaps a co-owner of one's business, and one's co-owner maybe defrauds your business and leaves you destitute, but they have deceived you, they have defrauded you, and they've run off with all the money. So these things do happen, and certainly it will appear as being unjust, as being entirely unfair.
네 상두신 내게 될 잠이지 곰 쇠복곰 내게 위신에 나신 빼면서 깨진 친구이 선배 안두신에 상당 오래지 했음 하나리
All too often, when problems and difficulties befall us, we think, why does this keep happening to me? This is so unfair. This is so unjust. Then the common way to deal with these things is to ruminate, to think about them again and again, feeling how unfair it is, why is life like this to me? And if it's in relation to another person, having resentment towards them, quite likely being angry towards them. If you felt this way, you know all that is happening is you are suffering. It's not resolving the situation. If you've been cheated out of an inheritance or out of your business, it doesn't suddenly magically reappear because you have resentment or anger. But you are suffering, you are in pain because of your response, because of your way of thinking. And this may well lead to you losing your appetite, struggling to sleep. And in the longer term, it will impede your trust of others, including those who are trustworthy. And of course, you are strengthening your habituation to non-virtue, strengthening your habituation to the afflictions and creating non-virtue. So there's only negative sides to responding in this ordinary way. A bodhisattva, though, a being who has trained their mind well, should they encounter the identical situation, their response will be completely different. Completely different. Similar to what's been presented before. They will recognize that this person who has stolen from them or cheated them, that this person is dominated by their afflictions. They wanted happiness, but because of their confused ignorance, they ended up pursuing a path which will only lead to non-virtue and therefore suffering. The bodhisattva, caring for all others, compassion arises for this deluded being. This deluded being who has cheated them and stolen from them. Compassion will arise for them. Love will arise. May they be happy. May they never have to experience the frightening results of what they've done. So this response from the bodhisattva is not because it's not a justification of the person who has deceived them or taken advantage of them, but it's an intelligent response understanding this person's mind as being deeply afflicted, and that person and their afflicted mind are not the same. And so they will, as we see in the fourth line, see this person as being like an excellent spiritual teacher, because this person is presenting them with an opportunity to put into practice all the meditation, the training they have gone through. The meditation based on all their teachings. Now, the bodhisattva has a real life opportunity to put it into practice, and they are experiencing its effect. So the bodhisattva, their mind is full of love and compassion and joy at this opportunity to practice. They have a joy at this opportunity to practice compassion for the person who's created the causes for suffering. But they, the bodhisattva, are not suffering in any way. So they are able to think like this or respond in this way because of their deep training and because of their long training. They have a far broader perspective, a more far-sighted view. They're looking far beyond this financial loss. They're looking far beyond this life's pleasures and problems. They are rather focused on the achievement of Buddhahood. Through their training, they are able to respond in a way whereby they accrue extensive virtue. Whereas how we usually respond is a way that just strengthens our afflictions and leads to accumulation of non-virtue.
Dina she is that. I didn't get one ye gonna take in Della means here, Sevocum of records. Queen Alia, Sevinium chair, Sevinium chair, Jimbinium Jevada, this is the Sevinium Galacard, she's not Sevocum de Galacard, she's not the Sevinium of Yahweh, Sambeda, she's not. Then I the Sevocum Miss Sambuch, Yamuchi, the Sevocum Sky Marida, says Sevocum Gamerua. Is that? In the end, several community, social Ganganti, social Guji, social Tubutan, Delia, several community. Is that the nigger several community? Bemas a young one, the nigger Zachim, the several community. You get a hag or Galacapore, something. The Rawat Bemas a young woman, several community Jason. The near some large in it, himself with some tangent and good quality. The nigger getting chimbo. Swimming, that's swimming, Chavana, Digi and Yawachima in Ayam, Yahoya, and Tarbata, Tamjiki, Sanjoko, to be Tanya, the king to Gurwa, Chesatini, Bemas Yahu is a beta, Geshe in Naji, Tapu, some Tanade, to stumble this order.
One's spiritual teacher, one's virtuous friend, is the person who teaches the Dharma to us, who shows us the complete and unmistaken path to enlightenment. And as a student, we respond to the training in patience that the teacher gives us by engaging, by learning the teachings and doing the meditations as guided. But it's only when we meet a person such as described here that we have the actual practical opportunity to practice what we have been putting into practice through meditation. Now we have an opportunity in our daily life, because our interactions with our teacher tends not to give us too many opportunities to practice patience, but ordinary suffering beings give us many. And by the Bodhisattva then, being able to put into practice their meditations, they are able to accumulate extensive virtue. And they know they are accumulating the causes here by which Buddhahood is fast approaching. This then leads to a deep inner strength, a confidence in the mind of the Bodhisattva, because they recognize that here is another example of where I can deal with life's hardships. They do not dominate me, they do not overwhelm me, and I can continue to give of myself and be of benefit. So from this, the Bodhisattva's confidence grows ever more.
Langri Subokombi, Yamen Chesaki, Masi Pando Chimbu Imbadre, Zamia, Givi Shin Nashinchi, or the Pando Chimbu, the Chin Chimbu, Getting Chimbu, some Natuba, Jigin Sebe, Dushin, some of those in it, now want to see some of them, the net, the reach have order, who say Anna, Dushin, some Davana, some non Deri or Chihuna. Deri Yubana, Jangdor, Deri Yubana, Jemadina Kanga Cherry, Takaji, Yamen Chetu, and Java in Wood. There was a mile drawing in Marmoria, Chick Jangdor, Jiri, Chazan drawing, Maja and Maya Pujatula. Jiri, I am never Jangdor, never Jiri, kind of Maja, Javadona, Yora Amadora Marma. I deny it, I was doing some non Manzolo Dushin, Jangdor Shokuri, Dusu, Jangdor Chiane, and two, some accumulation, Jandun, some Tango Queen, yes, they never combine the same. You should share. Then Ranshan Nigana, Hammer, the Otigidum, to go as the you to be again. Some Lama, did it as so much.
Hearing about how bodhisattvas deal with such challenges, we should relate to this as a source of inspiration and as a goal to strive to achieve ourselves. Because the bodhisattvas were once ordinary, no different from us. But in our training, we mustn't have such expectations that we can respond like bodhisattvas now. They can only respond in that way because of their training. So therefore, we should embark on this journey of training our mind. Training our mind in the way that described earlier, developing love, compassion, and patience. Recognizing that the practical purpose of training in patience is so as not to be overwhelmed by the adverse circumstances that one encounters, and to be able to skillfully deal with those who are suffering. With that recognition, then, one set out to train in patience, knowing that the theater of practice will be with afflicted people. This is the objective of training in patience, so that I can be amongst those in pain, those who are overwhelmed by suffering. When you do your meditation based on actual past experiences that you've had, where you have been with people who have challenged you in various ways. And you can also incorporate instances where you weren't the recipient, but you have observed in the world. Or, and what's particularly useful, is if you are expecting a challenging encounter, to prepare yourself, engage, do a role play in your meditation on that. So this is a skillful way to do a meditation on various topics. And the meditation's already been described, but some of the key points are gaining clarity that a person and their afflictions are not identical. The afflictions merely arise due to habituation, and the result of the arisal of afflictions is suffering. Therefore, when a person acts or speaks in an unkind manner, they are merely expressing their afflictions. They are merely expressing their suffering. With that, when you have that recognition clearly, you know that when others are trying to deceive you or trying to cheat you or speaking badly to you, if they're slandering you unfairly, or they are trying to take advantage of you in some way, you know it's actually not about you personally, but it's rather an expression of their own suffering, their own pain. This then enables you to respond with compassion, because it's not about you, it's about the suffering person before you. So I encourage you to meditate in this way. Use examples from your own life. Again, what you have experienced, what you expect to experience, or what you have observed. And this is no different from how sports people train before they engage in a sports match, or how soldiers train before they engage in warfare. By being well trained in what you expect to encounter, you'll be able to deal with it skillfully. If not, you will lose. It will not go well. So here, by training your mind again and again so that your habitual response is one of openness and compassion, you'll be able to practice patience even in the most challenging of circumstances.
대수기 단随便님는 제에 송거래 대시자다 随便님는 자 디네기 뉴요를 받아 가지고 随便님는 제에는 전주는 진리우치 찾아요 随便님는 随便리우세지 제자들 계시모를 받아 디나디 뒤에 뉴요 송거라.
This text is just very briefly touching on this topic of patience. Soon we'll be approaching that topic, maybe in a couple of weeks, in the Wednesday teachings in Shantideva's Engaging the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where Shantideva presents maybe 160 verses on this topic. There it's presented in great detail.
Disu dunga dalingi sebo kumna sungore. Chizaya le gyuje samdane, samdaje sebo kumna ya huya rashire. Chizaya nige sosu ya shen ya pendo ya wote dusin jebe na, an digi sosu ya gajin jinlen jue ya tsable nyoba ki kanga mungu jebe na, kamune sosu yone yaku rogo yaku jebe, pendo jebe, ina ya da su dine si kanga jebe da, kiawa nga ma sosu rangi holi ya nyoye dusin Any good Tibetan Sasha be table, social Mingores, but able to the Mingores, the means Mount Badano, Moa Chagor, Chesadi, like young lady table, Nejabure, some big me tell you that Kayo Mores, Ninja, Chesadini Chevade, social Tiniki, you social young wedding, young lady table, some Davina, or Dusine, some Davina, similar to my yes, Chesadini, Dusin to watch get.
The way I presented to think about patience thus far is in terms of dealing with suffering, to understand that the person before you is afflicted, and they are expressing their afflictions to you, they are suffering. A second way to respond to challenging encounters is to remind yourself that you are only in this situation because of causes that you have created in the past. This is the ripening effect of that. And now, by being patient and not therefore responding in kind, I have exhausted this past negative karmic imprint and replaced it with a virtuous imprint. Because if I had responded in kind, I would have exhausted a non-virtuous imprint from the past and replaced it with a new non-virtuous imprint. But rather I've responded skillfully, and now I've accumulated virtue. So recognizing this too shows that one is moving in a forward progression, moving away from suffering towards lasting happiness, and this also brings joy to the mind.
근데 지든 그거 진예바 대군 랑데 되려신 단다라 디송고로 제자다 나 중에 지든바 대디기 가려워야지 셴야 판바다 제외서마 셴 대와 주나서 비 상바지 내가 두고 제외나 소소리 디기 두고레스 소소 다 소소리야 소소랑 디기고 랑 디기 주나서 비 상랑 찍고 상다지 랑도 짜냐 상 되베나 디기 동아에 먹고 있고레스 강아 먹고 있고레스 디송고 제자 대자다 가지고 단다라 셴레 잠바단 제와 니시 안에 셴레随便 삼보 디삼만 냠는 제베이나 랑이 대와 셴레 대와 디기디 될레되는 것도 그래 삼로 되는 디기 죽도 그래 세대라 디기 세체만에 대에 안에 다른 띵이 대와 상교고 마토라 다 년이 그 상교고 말이 될레된 것도 그래 해서 다 디마선 맞제 셴레 삼마다 셴 가르치나 랑이 디기 주나 셴레 강아 제다 가켜봐요 말 디기 주는 아 강아 치세 우도 셴레 강아 주나 선배 가야말 선배 삼다 셴이야 집곧 도와제 랑 찍고 삼다 되베나 니이다 강아 누가 먹을리 그래 강아 먹을리 그래 해서 제사다 얘네게 지들 내가래도 마디 받지 되네 강아 먹을 디그리 해서 제사 누가 요야 쳐서 될리는 거라 랑 지지 삼게 랑 지지 삼 휴치 못게 랑 지지 삼 휴치 못게 여도 니기 다 랑게 되나게 주야게 되나 차와게 이 차와 얘네 이 텔레파시세야 된다 콘도게 제가 차마게 콘도게 나게게 니 요모가래 니 레가래다现在你把它敲进过你第一件的上也刚好现在刚好让是你个的彻底让是你个刚好 Kiwa Chimain, Dunga Yongoya, Tarba the Temji, Gova Toya, Tarin to Godes, is anti some Dago Mades, and that is more that.
직접에 아마타바타나
Jidin, Yawa Jiniepa, Deda, Degun Shendi Delicious, Shen the audio of the Chunguris, Jidin Dua Jiniepa, Degun Rangdi Delicious. Yeah.
So further verse from Shantideva, I don't know if the translator what chapter this is from. It goes something like, all the happiness in the world has come from wanting others to be happy. All the suffering in the world has come from wanting oneself to be happy. So I'll say it again. All the happiness in this world has come from wanting others to be happy. All the suffering in this world has come from wanting oneself to be happy. So here Shantideva again is presenting the different results that follow from following the self-cherishing mind or following the other cherishing mind. If we follow the self-cherishing mind, where we put the fulfillment of our needs first and foremost, even when it's at the expense of others, from this, only suffering follows. It's through this attitude that we keep ourselves trapped in samsara, keep following the afflictions, keep being deceived by our own self-cherishing and the resulting afflictions. It's this self-centered attitude whereby we push others aside and push ourselves, or perhaps ourselves and our loved ones, first and foremost. And if harm comes to others, that's okay. We justify it. We may say, oh, it's unfortunate, but. So this, being dominated by a self-cherishing attitude, means the afflictions will ripen one after the other, and we will continue to act under the control of these afflictions, because this is all we've known, and we believe it to be the right way, the acceptable way. But on the other hand, when we've come to recognize the faults of self-cherishing, of placing one's own happiness first and foremost, we recognize that attitude and its associated afflictions only actually cause me to suffer. I suffer now, and I suffer later in this life and lives to come through the karma created. Always keep this attitude of self-cherishing. It's what keeps me feeling alone, separate from others, distinct or different from others, unconnected with them. It's what leads me to feel alone, to feel anger, resentment, and other harsh thoughts towards others. This is when I cannot continue anymore. I need to rather take what I know in theory and try and cultivate that within. Because my own lived experience, following what I naturally do, this has led to so many problems and will continue to do so. Now I need to take this theory and try and cultivate it within and develop an other cherishing attitude. And develop it in the way described, because from this other cherishing attitude, whereby I recognize that others are no different from myself, and if I strive to fulfill their needs, as a consequence to that, I will attain happiness. This is how bodhisattvas live. And if I can emulate them, I will become like them. And in this way, one starts to redress this deep-seated habituation to self-centered behavior and starts to change one's attitude and recognizing that every success that others have is a source for joy, not of jealousy. And that when others are harsh towards myself, that's no reason to be harsh in response. But actually, I should only respond in kindness to the suffering being. So all this way of thinking, this transformed ways of thinking, comes about through valuing others. And because there are so many, placing the fulfillment of their needs first and foremost.
다 뒤서 처수 인구 파 뒤에 송바이나 안되는 시에서 다 진말 좀 하나 시에서 송거래 도나 무슨 규바이 한데 말이 군나불 마이에다 동아군 상회다 렘버쇼스.
But in these 6 verses thus far, a lot of practice has been presented. Now we come to the summary verse, to the 7th verse. In brief, I will directly and indirectly offer every benefit and happiness to all mothers, and each harmful act and suffering of my mothers may I discreetly take upon myself.
안데네 도나서 디니엘이야 손샤바 차상차파 돌뒤네 직뒤리셔 송바이나서다 타마나 그래서 무에삼 유베 판딘 무에삼 유베 이 판제마 판제 많은 걸로 불렀어 제자다 무에소 안데 지게 소수기 샤리아 판도 강투도 샤리아 만데 샤리아 판도 지고래서 판제 많은 걸로 마규 심자 탐제리아 프로그램 군부스 마 세sem자 탐제 랑게 만나시 마규 심자 탐제래 심자 탐제래 진행이가 차사 뭐서 안에서 판도 강아체 되지 판데 두고래서 야 무슨 제마도나 아니 기비고네 판데 두고래서 두고래서 뭐래 식당 일이와
Das war so eine Cuba-die korrekt.
기비고네 판데 두고래서 두타디 제시하러 다 간에 시월에 두타 제시로 와
So the verse starts with, in brief, that's a summation of what we've looked at. Here, in brief, I will directly and indirectly offer every benefit and happiness to all mothers. So there are 2 ways that the Bodhisattva is committing to be of benefit. There's directly engaging with others or explicitly engaging with others, or alternatively, indirectly or implicitly acting to benefit others. And in terms of others, we see here in the 2nd line, offer every benefit and happiness to all mothers. Right at the beginning, in the 1st verse, we spoke about how we come to recognize that all beings at a fundamental level want to be happy and free of suffering. So we develop this appreciation for others, this valuing of others towards all beings without exception. And what hasn't been covered thus far, but what one also includes in this meditation, that they have all been mothers to us in previous lives and shown us the kindness of mothers.
안에게 무슨 유비 비세도 무슨 세도 무슨 현리야 안에 지게 근데 비교리야 도로티가 칼라제 매주 로버지야 시행요 직변적 로버지야 돼 무슨 로버지야 돼 안에 지게 네발리아 매주지야 랑기 시행이 현래 납지 판도지야 되니게 나서토네 무슨 지투에 무슨 지역을 해서 무슨 지역을 해서 제상 무슨 지네 많은 되게 되게 그거래서 무엇이 사대 무엇이 나 전신 반응이 되니게다 되니게 판도 같이 무엇도 신나도 거로.
So helping directly would be through the practice of generosity, so expressing this wish to be of benefit to others. And that can be done in the practice of generosity is in 3 ways. So the giving of Dharma, where one would give Dharma teachings or give advice to beings, to suffering beings. Or secondly, it could be giving of fearlessness, so those whose lives are in danger, perhaps helping them access medical help and so forth. Or giving material generosity, and to ease the suffering of beings by material generosity, giving to charities or giving clothing to those in need and so forth.
근데 되니게 무슨 내가 지금 로봇 제투에 되네 제게 도스모 지역 아니 무슨 제 마토에 되게야 아니 인기비게 판도 지역을 해야 몰람죠 그래서 되니게 소수기 되니게 뭐 반응이 되수야 판도 지투가 쇼사 소수기 개와 사실 되게 개와 딜라 되네 아니 시 semjen 되게야 다 되게 두야다 동아세와 쇼 네 대와 개와 슈 두셰 개비 제고 디기디 semje tesole mi basho said dosi molam ya ko le so bibi said that did bibi was said.
So bodhisattvas will help directly, will help beings directly in the way just mentioned. And where they cannot do so, they will help indirectly. And helping indirectly would be through dedicating the merit they accumulate through practicing generosity or cultivating a meditation and so forth, as well as expressing prayers that may beings attain freedom from suffering, provided lasting happiness. So whilst there is a vast difference between how we can help others directly and indirectly with bodhisattvas, we cannot help broadly and in remarkable ways like they do. Nevertheless, we all have our own individual capacities, so I encourage you to continue to help others both directly and indirectly in accordance within the bounds of your own actual individual capacity, and help both directly and indirectly. And in this way, in accordance with one's capacity, one is following in the footsteps of the bodhisattvas and being of benefits in this world. So helping directly, I think this is quite clear. The ways that we can also help indirectly is when you observe good being done in the world, either, for example, medical practitioners or various types of charities, where you see good being done in this world. Rejoice in what those people are doing. Rejoice in their good motivation. Rejoice in their endeavors to ease the suffering of others. And by rejoicing and generating joy, you are creating merit, and dedicate that merit to the successful accomplishment of those individuals' good deeds, as well as to all beings engaging in various good deeds. Dedicate the merit to their successful accomplishment. And then you can dedicate it further in particular, so that beings' temporary sufferings are not, so that not only the temporary sufferings of beings are alleviated, but that beings develop the causes so that they can receive the guidance to abandon suffering and its causes from the very root. And in this way, you commit yourself, and then finally you commit yourself further to continuing in your own spiritual endeavors, so that you can help ever more. So in this way, you can help others both directly and indirectly.
차진 쟁가리요 받아 되네게 내다서 동화 카리요 찾아다 대수 찾아 나를 야민 버셔서 나를 수례다 나를 수수례다 되네 도시다 동화군 상회다라 야버셔서 되네 도시 대고 그래서 아직 매 마주 생산 실력바 동화지 찾아 수례고 그래서 중국
Yeah. The second line, offer every benefits and happiness to others, is a practice of giving your virtue to others, so that this virtue you've created ripens in their experience. The third line is the companion practice of taking the suffering of others. So here in meditation, one recalls the suffering that beings are experiencing in this world, whether it's mental pain or physical pain, whatever problem, suffering, or difficulties others are experiencing, you generate the wish. May they be free of this, and to be free of it, may it ripen on me, may I experience it on their behalf.
이사다 되네게 되는 식시 당번이데 랑기 무엇을 이외다 규벽권에 랑기 대화도 규규로저 된 책의 샬파 다야제 디디기 개화도 팔라 디기 샬제 삼다다 대신 심제 탐제기 농아다 뇌비가 강아지 차선 수례게 삼다데 도시는 삼을 장도 채우고 그래서 그래서 지사디 논len 공치가 지사디니 이사다 심제 탐제기 농아다 녀모가 치수 레게 렌투르스 렌스 개요 말다 레요 말와 매반사다 다 강아 렌투에는 렌치와 가르 렌투에요스네 미가시 직자라를 계지 동 깔림 어쩌여도 어다되게 되스 캐로 지어서야지 결혼을 지도하셔서 계려야 와 이네게 강아 렌투에 요르와다 근데 내가로 아주 결혼도스 미스 캐로지 결혼자는 얘기하고서 결혼도스 깔려가지고 미스야디 결혼자라기 이네게 농아디게 가지고 강아디게 추가지게 코로나에 relativi tuyaji ungurwada dinemura madashe corona naduba nasadinga suleje party tiki teaska ma tuya ma tunga chaga sule tuya yo ma me balsa sangwe dala lembar shosin samli tampo samli tone da tu sin tu lingi sabe da ni lingi sabe samdaya da ngi len yu sam du sin samlo nala tu chang mo re dine chaba da ningdo pye ya so sugi 강아 간의 셴레 패도 주야기 셴예 두머세는 니도 기야기 진짜 되니기 삼나야디 파 동len 삼나 장고 해서
In this verse, then, we are firstly giving to others the causes of happiness. We dedicate our merit to them. We offer every benefit and happiness to all mothers. Because benefits and happiness comes about in dependence on causes. So those causes, virtue, we dedicate what we have accumulated so that it ripens on others. And we then take from them their non-virtuous causes that will ripen into problems and suffering and difficulties. And we express the aspiration, may it ripen upon us rather than them. May all my virtue ripen in their experience. May all that is good, may they experience it. And all the non-virtue they've accumulated, rather than they have to be tormented by that pain, may it ripen upon me. So this, in brief, is the meditation. But then to talk about how it actually comes about. So firstly, what does not happen is that if you are engaging this meditation towards someone who's ill, it's not that they suddenly heal from their illness and now you're sick. It cannot happen. But what happens is that your strength of mind grows, your courage to help and to deal with hardships grows. Then when you do experience challenges, you experience it through this lens that may I grow in strength so that I can transform difficulties and be of benefit and not be overwhelmed by hardships. And when you see opportunities to help others, you'll step outside of your comfort zone to be of help to others. For example, you see someone who's carrying something heavy, and you say, let me carry it. You've done enough for one day, and you carry that load for them. That is the way that you will experience their suffering. That is how you'll take on their burden. you will not experience their impoverishment or their illness, but you will transform your mind and develop a deep inner strength so that you can reach out and help those who are in need and give of yourself to others with sincerity.
Okay.
And sorry, and then the final line, and the way that this is practiced is discreetly. One isn't making a big deal about this, one's not advertising it. One does this practice quietly in one mentally and not publicizes it. And this final line, may I discreetly take upon myself. So here, the word is discreetly, or it's secret. The way to understand this word secret, which we hear in some context, is as meaning hidden. It's not the secret you don't tell, but it's something you don't publicize. You do it discreetly. So that's, when you hear the word secret, it means the meaning is more of being discreet, doing something in a hidden manner. So illness for all of us is something that we have experienced and will continue to experience. It is the very being a samsaric being, we will suffer in this way. So when illness befalls you, then the advice is twofold. Firstly, receive the excellent medical treatment that is available in this country. And then in terms of taking care of your mind, apply what is presented in this verse, recognizing that this illness that you are now experiencing, there's no need to feel particularly sorry for myself, maybe unwanted, unwished for, but there's no benefit in feeling sorry for oneself, thinking, poor me, poor me. Rather recognize that throughout this world, there are so many beings who are suffering in ways similar to you, in ways worse than you, in ways not as bad as you. So many beings are suffering in various ways. And then, calming the mind like that, by seeing this isn't, again, it's not all about me, it's nothing personal. Calming the mind in that way, and open yourself up to the suffering of others. Recognize they have not received teachings such as these, so they just suffer in pain. But I apply these teachings well now, take on their suffering, and may they gain freedom from pain. I can deal with this, because I recognize this suffering is the purification of past non-virtue. Let it be purified, let it be exhausted. And may all beings, through my experiencing of this illness, may all beings gain freedom from non-virtue. May no being ever have to suffer from any form of pain or misery again. Through the ripening of my non-virtue, may all beings gain freedom from their non-virtue. And whatever virtue I create, so that's the taking, and whatever virtue I have created here, I give to others. I sincerely give it to others. May others abide in happiness. May they be free of suffering. May they come to know what the causes are for happiness and cultivate them, and only cultivate causes for happiness. So in this way, one can, lying in your bed ill, you can practice taking and giving. And by doing so, your mind will become light and joyous. Because whilst your body is in pain and your mind will be experiencing that physical suffering, because of not taking it personally, because of thinking about others, because of generating these and other virtuous minds, you are happier. Your body may be in pain, you may be experiencing that pain, but you will be experiencing it in a different way. The suffering will not nearly be as intense. Moreover, because of you intentionally making this effort and experiencing the result, your confidence will grow. I can transform my mind. I can become a bodhisattva. And in this practice of taking and giving, it fits entirely with the practice of patience, in that when one is practicing patience, one is on the receiving end of the expression of suffering, and what is one is giving is love and acceptance to the suffering person. So some years ago, a monk I know, he was a recent arrival from Tibet, so he was new in our monastery. And being new to India, the climate and the conditions were vastly different from what he knew in Tibet, and as so many did, he became ill. So he wasn't responding well to medical treatment, so he went up to Dharamsala for treatment. And there he was in hospital, and he was looking out the window, and he saw, every day he saw these children scavenging in the garbage for food. And seeing these poor kids who had clearly were not, their parents were unable to feed them, and they had to fend for themselves, scavenging food from the garbage. Compassion arose within him. And now, being a patient in the hospital, he was being cared for, and part of the care was being fed. And so he insisted on half his meal being given, or half his food every day being given to these children.
And the Nijin was never does on that. You would deal that not to watch imagine that have been to some begin. That will watch a same issue. She did. In a consulate, Geshe go up Ravium, Kalaza, to a she go up your maternity, cause the she go up to a job, somebody, same shoe, part of a same shoe, yes, and then young Jedia, she do offer. Other young, I will kill some time, I wish you would have said it. Yamji Jabiana, Nituye, Tolaya, Yamji Roboche, and Goro to Sidwa. Therefore, Jagi Singomada, when Massa Jiswa, Jazan didn't quit Misaki Budi, Al me Lapta and years, and Lobsang cheese, Malia, Sutano Chiladu. Is that the eating Mara, the dear Zero Chimisa, Tangpa? And the quote the nature of Uzu Japus and Poo Chickens there, and called Dua Jane or Zation Lucille. Lobsang he charged and didn't match a chick and the nature Mongoji laid out what the nature Lobsang. Very young child, that whole Usuya has.
Oh, just not so. The deeper process. Yeah, comes from.
这落几个嘛，然后这落就俺这步俺这落这个这落上这个是在当落几个嘛的，俺这边我说也那个都现在，俺这嘛这一个当落，这落上二十的，听个民俺讲那你是过的，人叫嘛我就靠看这个人不叫不的个，达到前面就是叫帮我的就是连接，俺都是拉不住，今天落上呀我听的，但是俺今天个落上呀我听的嘛我至少是个。 Bendigo Lobsang Dorje kasi chiye Canada dua ba tang chi phi dua so zha zha tun chi su le de mao dua jine jesan da bu di ge ga la lu se de bu di ge ga la lu se de a ji ngan zo ya dine ge la ma ro ba je pe ya so ya bo shu yi ngan zo sam ma ya pe ji long ge ga du sto de long ge ga ru ni me da ba ru long ge je ma ra de nang li de pe mi so dam da de 现在弄呀，国家民族，俺那天的新干操那么大，啥啦，这不修的是，其实他天那个些人过不来，我什么难要嘛的是，啊，天那个什么大姐，俺这个没些就我修清爽是，其实天那个俺这呢有我的，如果这样的，刚头的几个车的，什么学习不爱最多啊，很多学校。
So fortunately, this monk, he eventually healed from his illness. So now he was strong again, and he was ready then to return to his monastery, or to our monastery. But he didn't feel comfortable with that. He didn't feel comfortable knowing that he was going back to continue his education, whilst these children who had no opportunity for education, they lived in such poverty that their parents could not care for them. The monk then went to see His Holiness to ask for help, because he wanted to establish a charity to give education to these children, because he knew education was the only way to break the cycle of poverty that these families were in. His Holiness applauded his intention, applauded his wish, and therefore helped him establish a charity, a school. Then he went, the monk established the school and went around speaking to these impoverished families, saying, I can offer you education for your children. But from the perspective of these people, of the Indian villagers, they had no idea who this strange Tibetan man was who didn't speak their language. He had turned up and said, give me your kids. It seemed really odd. They had not been helped. And now this stranger who couldn't really talk to them, who looked so different, was saying he will help. So most of them just pushed him away. But slowly, one family, a second family, sent their children, because there's nothing, they had no money. So they sent the kids to the boarding school, and they received an excellent education. And as other families heard about this, and they knew it was going okay, the kids were safe, more and more children were sent, until eventually the school was full. And the kids, they were fed well, they had a medical treatment if they got ill, they had a good education. And a number of them went on to university, some even managed to get scholarships through other charities and were educated abroad, some in Canada. Now, I've heard of some who went to medical school in Canada and then returned as doctors. And the parents of these kids were obviously thrilled, because their whole family's fortunes have been transformed. Because these children, obviously they were kids, they loved and cared for the kids, but they could not take care of them because they themselves were impoverished, and yet a stranger had. And now their children with an education and decent employment were able to help their parents and their other siblings. So these families' fortunes were transformed.
你那个的，他什么都现在的很多的这对中国的话的那个，对，你的就是，的那个一些呢，就给现在学的讲理解，现在他为什么中国的说的，那原来那的那个很多这对中国的的。
So I shared the story as an illustration of the results that come from training your mind. This particular individual, he was a new monk. He hadn't received much of formal education in this life, so clearly he had wonderful influence from past lives. And through that, he was able to bring so much benefit to others. So I share this as encouragement for everyone to train their mind, to make efforts. the results will come in this and lives to come.
Oh yeah, that is awesome.
So thank you, and we can conclude there for today. Thank you.